Well, all of the work comes down to this. I think it is time to fire this thing off.
Derek Bieri's mission to get his 1960 El Camino to a car show 400 miles away was full of drama. He showed you the engine install, the custom exhaust, and the last-minute fixes. But the real disaster wasn't the stuff he fixed, it was the one thing he didn't. Buried deep in the heart of the car, a vital component was already dead on arrival, a fact confirmed by a horrifying discovery in a pan of fluid. The El Camino's doomed road trip wasn't a surprise. It was a self-destruct sequence that Derek himself unknowingly activated the moment he bolted it all together. The grenade in the gearbox. The heart of any build is the engine, and Derek poured time into rebuilding a beastly supercharged 406 cubic inch small block. But an engine is useless without a transmission to send that power to the wheels.
Also, I've driven this truck. I'm the one that revived it and got it running. Anyway, that's embarrassing.
This is where the El Camino disaster truly began. The video shows Derek making a mistake, thinking the car had a power glide transmission when it actually had a turbo 350. He calls it an embarrassing mix-up, but the good news, he says, is that he has a turbo 350 converter from another project. What he doesn't emphasize is the state of the transmission it's going into. Truth be told, this wasn't just any old used transmission, it was a ticking time bomb.
This down a little bit. We've got a little bit of an oil leak going on here, and you can see it puddling in there. I don't know if I'm going to be able to remedy that or not.
The first major clue, the one that screams "stop," is glossed over with a laugh. When his friend Chad drops the transmission pan to service it, they discover a horrifying sight. Derek mentions there was glitter and shrapnel, even joking that 84% of the clutches were in the pan. Let's be clear, this isn't a minor issue. For the average person, glitter in your transmission fluid is the mechanical equivalent of a terminal diagnosis. That glitter is the ground-up metal from the clutch plates, bands, and bearings inside. Finding a tiny amount might be normal wear over 100,000 miles. Finding what Derek describes as shrapnel, and most of the clutch material means the transmission has already eaten itself alive. There's literally nothing left inside to provide the friction needed to hold a gear under load. A turbo 350 is a tough transmission, a legend in the hot-rodding world for its ability to handle power. But even a legend has its limits. The heat and stress from a supercharged engine, pushing out hundreds of horsepower and torque, is immense. Putting that kind of power through a transmission that has already destroyed its own internals is like asking a marathon runner with 2 broken legs to sprint. It's not a question of if it will fail, but when. Every single gear shift, every press of the accelerator was just counting down the seconds until the inevitable. The fluid change and new filter were meaningless. It was like putting a Band-Aid on a gaping wound.
So let me strip this down really quick, and then we'll talk torque converters, try to swing this in.
The damage was done. The internal parts were already gone, and the transmission was nothing more than a heavy, fluid-filled case waiting to give up the ghost. The moment he bolted that dying gearbox to a fresh, powerful engine, the 400-mile trip to Virginia was doomed. He even admits they saw chunks that looked sun-shellish. The sun shell in a turbo 350 is a known weak point. It's a metal part that transfers power, and when it strips out or breaks, you lose reverse, second, and fourth gears. Seeing chunks of it in the pan means a catastrophic failure has already occurred. Yet, in the race against the clock, the decision was made to pretend we didn't see that. This wasn't an unknown detail. It was a known, catastrophic failure that was willfully ignored. The pressure of the deadline, the desire to get the car to the show, and the good-enough-for-now attitude overrode basic mechanical common sense. At the end of the day, the transmission didn't fail on the highway 35 miles from home. It failed on the garage floor before the trip even started. The drive was just the final, agonizing death rattle. This single, overlooked decision is the crux of the entire El Camino disaster. A problem so big, it made every other issue seem minor in comparison. But as we'll see, the other issues weren't minor at all. They were part of a pattern of problems that plagued this entire build from top to bottom. More problems than parts. With the dying transmission bolted in, the stage was set for the main event of the El Camino disaster, But the supporting cast of problems was just as dramatic. This wasn't a case of one single thing going wrong, it was a whole symphony of shortcuts and overlooked issues coming home to roost. The most glaring was the rear end. Derek quickly discovered a massive problem.
We should see separation here. Two things. I'm going to slide the air jack forward, and then we're going to see if we can wrestle these tires off.
The huge rear tires were rubbing hard against the inside of the tub. On a normal car with a 4-link suspension, you'd simply adjust the panhard bar to recenter the axle. Easy fix, right? Not here. In a jaw-dropping discovery, he found the adjustment bar had been welded solid. Think about that for a second. The one part designed to let you center the rear end was permanently locked in the wrong position. This is a massive red flag, suggesting the previous work on the truck was rushed and done improperly. This left Derek with a huge problem. With no way to adjust the axle, the only solution was a risky one: wheel spacers. The crew managed to get a 1/4 inch of space, but Derek admits he doesn't like the thread engagement on the lug nuts, even saying they'll have to check that every 12 miles. That's not a fix. It's a prayer. A 1/4 inch spacer can reduce the effective threads holding your wheel on by a dangerous amount. On a heavy car with a powerful engine, that's a recipe for a wheel flying off at highway speed. Then there was the exhaust. Derek bought expensive Sanderson headers, but during the frantic build, he made a critical mistake. He and his buddy Chad mocked up and welded the brand new exhaust system before installing the starter. When the time came to bolt the starter in, it didn't even come close to fitting. The custom bent pipe was directly in the way. This forced Derek to cut up his brand new, perfectly good exhaust system and try to patch it together himself with limited tools. It's a gut-wrenching moment that cost him precious time and ruined expensive parts, all because of one simple sequencing error. The unique X-frame design of early 60s GM cars already makes exhaust routing a nightmare.
This pipe, and I don't even know how it's possible, but it needs to be way over here to even be remotely close. So I'm gonna cut it right here.
Not accounting for the starter made it an almost impossible puzzle, and the problems kept coming. The front suspension had a broken coil spring, a freak failure that the manufacturer luckily replaced. But while fixing it, they found the spindle was damaged from a past wheel bearing failure, forcing them to spend time sanding it down just so the parts would fit. Then, the brake dust cap was seized on so tight it took 2 guys with a giant knife and pry bars to get it off. This wasn't a smooth assembly, it was a constant fight, with every single step revealing another problem, another shortcut from a past life, another potential point of failure. Each of these issues, the welded rear end, the sketchy spacers, the exhaust fiasco, the broken spring, would be a major headache on its own. Together, they paint a picture of a car that was fighting the build every step of the way, a vehicle riddled with hidden problems that the tight deadline left no time to fix properly. 105 degrees of desperation. The mechanical failures tell one part of the story, but to understand what really happened with the El Camino, you have to look at the human element. This entire build was done under the immense pressure of a 2.5-day deadline, in crushing 105-degree heat. That kind of environment leads to exhaustion, and exhaustion leads to mistakes and reckless decisions. The video is filled with moments where safety and proper procedure are thrown out the window in the name of speed. The goal wasn't just to build a car, it was to beat the clock, and that meant cutting corners. The wiring is a perfect example. Derek pulls out handfuls of what he calls haggarded wiring, a tangled mess of splices and mystery wires from previous work.
Well, wiring away. Got the battery plugged in, got 2 lines on here. One's going to the voltage regulator, one's coming back over to the charging wheeler. Got to find the nut for that. I lost it.
Instead of methodically tracing and replacing the old, unreliable harness, he's forced to do quick patches and run new wires alongside the old mess. He has to poke around with a power probe to figure out basic things like the headlights and starter relay because the wiring is so chaotic. This is how you end up with electrical gremlins, or worse, a fire on the side of the road. Get this, he even had to jimmy a new switch for the headlights because the old one wasn't working, and admits his final fix leaves him with low beams and taillights, but no mention of brake lights or blinkers. The relentless pace meant there was no time for shakedowns or test drives. The first time the car drove more than around the block was the beginning of the 400-mile trip itself. This is what's known as a trial by fire, and it's an incredibly risky way to debut a fresh build, especially one with so many known issues. Every leak, every strange noise, every potential problem had to be discovered and diagnosed on the highway, in traffic, hundreds of miles from the workshop. This desperation is what led to the most questionable fixes. The wheel spacers with barely enough thread engagement are a huge gamble. The decision to run the known-to-be-destroyed transmission was the biggest gamble of all. The crew was running on fumes, working late into the night, fueled by the singular goal of making it to the show. At the end of the day, it wasn't just the car that was pushed past its limits. It was the people working on it. The disaster wasn't just a mechanical failure, it was a failure of process, brought on by a reckless race against an impossible deadline. Was it all part of the show? After seeing all the evidence, was the El Camino disaster really a surprise? Or was it something else? Let's be real for a minute. When you find what looks like 84% of a transmission's clutches ground into a fine metal paste in the bottom of a pan, you don't have to be a master mechanic to know that gearbox is junk. You know it's not going to survive a trip around the block, let alone a 400-mile journey on the interstate.
For leaks, we'll fire it again, and we're going to try the transmission.
Derek laughs it off, saying, "We'll pretend we didn't see that, and beggars can't be losers." But is it possible this was a calculated risk? A gamble taken not just to get to the show, but to create a compelling story for the camera. The drama of a roadside breakdown is undeniable. It makes for great content. A smooth, uneventful trip is, well, boring. The narrative of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory only to pivot to another car and heroically make it to the show in the end is a powerful storyline. Are we missing a key detail here? Perhaps the hope was that the transmission would miraculously hold together. Maybe it was just pure, unfiltered optimism in the face of overwhelming evidence. Or perhaps it was a content creator understanding that conflict and failure are the bedrock of engaging storytelling. The video itself becomes a testament to the never-give-up spirit, even if the initial failure was entirely predictable. The bottom line is, the transmission was the perfect villain for the story. It allowed the mighty engine to be the hero, while the gearbox played the part of the traitorous component that brought the whole mission crashing down. It created a problem that needed a dramatic last-minute solution, which came in the form of swapping to a different car. It's a perfect three-act structure: the hopeful build, the tragic failure, and the triumphant recovery. Whether it was by accident or by a stroke of storytelling genius, the doomed transmission was the most important part of the entire adventure. Was it a series of unlucky breaks, or a predictable failure that made for a better story? What do you think? Let us know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more.